Just as a matter of a reminder, the meeting was set, the workshop was set for 4 o'clock, and we're beyond that, and I know everybody here knows that I like to start on time. Unfortunately, I think some of the commissioners got a little bit delayed, and technically we can start at this particular point without a quorum, but I'd like to kind of wait for at least 1 or 2 more. There's Rose. Okay. How are you? Okay. Estella, now we can proceed.
Notice of a public meeting of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville. Pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meetings Act, notice is hereby given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of said city, will convene a workshop on Thursday, May the 3rd, 2012 at 4 p.m. in the Commission Chambers on the second floor of the Brownsville City Hall, 901 East Elizabeth Street, Brownsville, Cameron County, Texas. Workshop item, discussion regarding city budget.
Okay, now, we don't have an invocation or pledge of allegiance.
Yes, we do have an invocation.
But we have, I know we have Pastor Eddie La Fuente from the Good Shepherd Community Church. I really would like to start this meeting with an invocation.
Bow your heads, please. Heavenly Father, every good gift and perfect gift comes from you. You are a faithful God, and your mercy endures forever. This afternoon, on the National Day of Prayer, we lift up our country, our state, and our city. We come before you once more today, seeking your forgiveness and your mercy for the sins of the nation. You, O God, are our only hope. Hear our prayer for your honor's sake, and shine your face upon us. Give our leaders the desire to seek your wisdom and the courage to follow your guidance. Lead these men and women by your Spirit to make the necessary decisions for this, your city. You have promised to bless a nation that trusts in you, and even our currency says, "In God we trust." Help us as a nation and as a city to put our trust solely in you. Thank you for the leaders represented here today, for their service and sacrifice to create a stronger community here in the Rio Grande Valley. We give you thanks for all that you have done for us, and we earnestly pray that you will help us become once again a city and a nation whose God is the Lord. In the name of your Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Brad, there's also an announcement that's kind of off not on the charts, but I think it'd be nice for all of us to hear.
This is the National Day of Prayer, as many of you have already heard. There's already been some prayer events around the city, but there's one at 5:30 at Veterans Park next to the library. And everybody's welcome. There's various pastors throughout the community taking part, and that's where I'm on my way now to help put things together. So God bless you all. And you're welcome to the event at Veterans Park, 5:30.
And Brad, thank you for all the times that you come here and help us out. So
Thank you.
Have a good event.
I really appreciate the spirit at which the meetings have been conducted lately.
Thank you. Can we say the Pledge of Allegiance? Yes. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Okay. I know that probably there has been some questions as to, and I hope everybody can hear me. I don't know if my mic is working, as to why this meeting was called, but I thought it was the appropriate moment. After Tuesday's meeting, we had a report on the budget, and we're getting ready. I know that the police department and the fire department have already got their packages. I happen to have attended 100% of all the meetings for the budgets last year, and it is a long process and a good process. But I think it's a process that perhaps has some questions to be asked, and the whole idea of today is to see if we can seek avenues and answers. Sometimes during the process of our city meetings, some of our city commissioners have asked some questions of some of the directors and some of the departments, and I know it takes a while to explain all that during the regular meetings, and if you all know, I like to keep those meetings kind of to the point and short, because I know everybody's got families and other things that also are of equal importance. So we're kind of trying to take this opportunity not to tell anybody how to run their departments or do whatever they're supposed to do. What we'd like to do is to be able to ask questions, to be able to say, hey, here during this budget process, you were awarded or allotted X amount of dollars last year. You're probably asking for an increase. Pete probably wants you to decrease. We want to know, what is the justification for that increase or decrease. We want to know how much money you spend. We want to know how it is spent. How do you keep track of it? And basically, for all intents and purposes, it's no different than any kind of, event or endeavor where you need a scorecard. You got to know what are you getting the most efficient use of your money, and the city is entitled to know, the taxpayers are entitled to know exactly what we are spending our money on. And I'm sure a lot of you, it's not the first time you hear about, and I guess every administration hears, hey, what about our streets? What about the potholes? How come we're not doing this? How come we're not doing that? Is it a lack of manpower? Is it a lack of money? Is it a lack of equipment? How do we keep track of our equipment? All those things I think are pertinent to the running of our business as a city. So I think that we need to establish, first of all, I think we'll allow Pete to explain to us the budget process. Most of you have been through it, but it takes about 3 to 4 months. And basically, the whole inquiring minds want to know is, hey, why do you want some more money? I can give you, for instance, and I think Commissioner Gowan we kind of went through this process, and the grant writers last year, this is just an example. We find out that they actually needed more staff. It was like, well, our budget doesn't really allow for that. And so the minds that we were there, Rose and I were both there, saying, hey, well, what kind of monies do they produce out of these grants? What is the actual return on your investment? Just like I would in any corporation that I have. And we found out that they were, a really solid group of people that were doing a fine job and were producing, X amount of dollars of grant money. So instead of focusing their attention on having to do administrative duties, I think in the wisdom of Pete and Charlie and everybody else, they were afforded to get extra money to have an administrative aid, and they can concentrate their efforts on writing the grants, which they're very good at, and hopefully produce more money. And therefore, that's the whole idea. For all of you who may or may not have been in the private sector or have outside businesses, I know that John here has his own business, and we all run it that way. Otherwise, we still wouldn't be in business. And I think, Jessica, you do the same thing. Estella's got her law practice, and you've had your medical practice. So this is nothing new other than it's a nice time to visit the budget process. It's a nice time to figure out whether we can ask some questions and we can get some answers. It's a nice time to see. One of the other objectives is to figure out, because this process starts like in May. I think you all get your packets sometime May the 14th or 18th, somewhere around there. And then I spent last summer, and my assistant Sandra was with me, going through June, July, and August, and finally in September we got it all done. And that's a long time for a budget process, okay? And I think that if we are all put our thinking caps on, that perhaps maybe we can figure out how to narrow this thing down. One of the things, and this is a very selfish thing, is that these meetings that we have on the city meetings, and most of you attend them, they're very good. It's something that democracy requires and allows, and they're a good thing. That's the only way to run a city. But they also get a little tiring, and so the city of San Antonio, who I deal with a whole lot, what their city commission does is, they go 11 months out of the year, and then they say, okay, staff, city commission, give yourselves a break, renew, and refuel for another year, and you come back and you start in August, and you take off. You don't have any city meetings. Now there's an emergency. Charlie's 24/7. If not, Jeff is, or someone within, or Pete. I mean, it's not that the city won't run itself. It's just that we don't have public meetings, and again, it'll free up a couple of Tuesday nights for most of you, and it'll certainly be a welcome change, I think, for everybody, if it can be done. And so that's why I'm saying, is there a way to kind of shorten the process, trying to get to a little bit more where we can have, let's say, the initial step in June. If there needs to be some time to adjust to this, July would be an internal administrative kind of time, and then finish it up in August. And if not, maybe even shorten it even more as time goes on. But this is all an attempt. Trust me, this, it takes a little bit of time, but I'm willing to do it if it's going to be helpful to the city. And that's why we're here today, and I thank everybody for being here. Pete, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and just kind of start the ball rolling.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a calendar of events that will take place in order for you to adopt the budget. And I'll go over it with you as we go along. I guess I can sit here.
Before you start, Pete, the reason that we're doing this sort of setup, just so that everybody's wondering, why aren't you guys sitting up there? It's twofold. The first thing is we had a PUB workshop meeting with this kind of setup, and it allowed the flow of the dialogue to be really even. For some of you who are not familiar with all of the legal stuff, the reason that they have judges and juries on elevated planes is because, and the lawyers when they're trying a lawsuit on what we call the pit, is that they have a higher duty. We have to respect whether you're a juror or whether you're a judge. They're on a different plane when we're out there advocating, and so it's a way of establishing the hierarchy, if you would, by saying you're up there, I'm down here, I'm fighting. You guys are deciding, and you, judge, are going to be the referee. So that's the way it goes. Today, it's nothing like that. Today, it's a dialogue that has to be established between the City Commission and all the departments. So go ahead, Pete.
Before I start the budget process, I know that in the past you've asked us to prepare a budget for each commissioner. So let me, and again, this is just a working document. We can change it as we go along. The front page, well, until you get it, the front page just says the way it is right now. The second page gives you a breakdown by commissioners. The first page, obviously, this is the way it is right now. This is the way, and mainly what we have here is all the commissioners that have travel budgets, and then at the very top you have the stipends for your. In other words, the cost for your services, materials and supplies, and then all these other miscellaneous services. And if you turn the page...
We have one more page.
Thank you. The second page is just, again, a working document as to how it would look if we go ahead and set up a budget for each member of the City Commission, starting with the mayor. Then we have Commissioner at Large A, at Large B. I'm reading on page 2. District 1, District 2, District 3, District 4. And that's the entire City Commission budget. And then the main one there would be the travel. The travel, the mayor, as in the past, gets $10,000, and then each of the other commissioners, $4,350. There are some commissioners that received auto allowance, and they're listed there. Not all of you have asked for an auto allowance, but it's in there. In other words, we have District 1, District 3, and District 4 that get an annual car allowance of $4,200. Again, we are starting the budget process soon, so in the meantime, we have enough time to make any changes between now and the time that the budget gets adopted. Let's go ahead and start with the calendar of events, the budget process. We actually, on the first one, of course, you got the the calendars on top so that you can follow this in an easier way. And again, this is to I guess, the budget planning and the tax rate approval. Beginning, we started with March 28th. We went ahead and because of collective bargaining, because of contracts, we started earlier. And they turn in all the information that's needed for the coming year of 2013, all the increases in there that they have based on the contract, fire and police. May 16th is the date that we meet with the departments. We distribute all the information, all the packets that we need. And on the 18th, we have to train anyone with their time. We're going to be asking for the departments to turn in their budgets by June 15th, and I'm on page 2. Then on the 18th, I prepare the revenues, and so forth and so forth. And then there's along there are certain dates that we have to publish, and one of the things about us is that for every public hearing, we want to make sure that we have notices in the newspaper to notify the public of the upcoming events. We estimate, this is based on history, that we will get the Chief Appraiser's Appraisal District tax roll, certified tax roll, on July 20th. And then we get additional information on July 23rd. These are all estimates based on prior history. Then on the 24th, I start getting all the information to prepare for the effective tax rate. Now, let's keep in mind that the reason why we have, if you look all the public hearings that we have in the budget, there's about 6 of them. And the reason why we have 6 public hearings, as we go along, you'll understand why. If, when we calculate the effective tax rate, and the effective tax rate is the same rate that will generate the same amount of property revenues that you received the prior year. Let me give you an example. Let's say that when we do the calculations of the effective tax rate, let's say, as an example, it calculated at 70 cents. Let me go back. It calculated at $69.95. We have a tax rate right now, let's say, of 70 cents. The law says if you're going to get a rate above the effective tax rate, you must have public hearings. Let's say that once we calculate all this and the calculated rate is $69.50, we're going to come to you and say, well, let's go ahead and keep the same tax rate at 70 cents. Why lower it? Because you keep it every year, it's going to be harder to pick it up. So by doing so, because we're increasing it above the effective tax rate by law, must have 2 public hearings. And that's where as soon as we follow this calendar, you'll see where we have those 2. We have to. It's a must. And not only that, we have to publish in the newspaper, and we also have to have all these hearings on our TV station and web. All of this has to be done, and this is all by state law. Okay, let's go ahead and, on August the 7th.
Let me just, I don't mean to interrupt, but if I recall correctly, did you have two meetings, 2 public meetings last year? And they were, I remember one being held in August, was the other held
In September.
In September. Okay, again, just for point of clarification, those, and you have to publish them, with a certain amount of notice.
Yes.
But those can be very effectively set up for August and September, just so everybody can understand that. And that's really all you need as far as know about that. Okay.
Okay, so we move along on August, and I've skipped some dates that are not that
No,
they're
no,
important
that's-
for me, but not
sure.
important for you. The ones important to you are the ones that are in bold. August 7th, it would be our first public hearing. This is something that when we come to you and would say, well, this is, and more than likely the budget to you on the 7th, or we're probably having, like in the past, difficulties in balancing the budget. And we go back and do cuts. On the 7th, you, as a governing body, you must acknowledge the certified tax roll by the chief appraisal. So on August 7th, you acknowledge the certified roll. And then on the 7th, I have to also estimate the collection rates. That has to be certified by me. And then on August 7th, I may come to you and say, in order for us, if we can want more revenues, I'm going to be asking for a tax increase. And that's normal. That's a normal step that we do every year. And all of that is done on the 7th. Then on the 8th, then I take publication notice to the Brownsville Herald. We have to publish, that's required by law again, we must publish the effective and rollback tax rates in the newspaper so that the public can see it. And that's scheduled to be on August the 11th. Finally, on August 10th, there's a draft, complete a budget draft. Then on August the 14th, we have a special meeting. And in this meeting, if we're going to adopt a tax rate above the effective tax rate, I will come to you and ask you to set 2 dates, 2 public hearings, to listen to. And it's always good, I think, to do these steps just in case when the budget comes, the day that we're going to adopt the budget and say, oh, we could have just raised another half a penny, we could have raised X amount of dollars. We couldn't do it because we did not have these 2 meetings. So on the 14th, I tell you, set one for the 28th and one for the 4th. That's what's here. And then follow that, you have the city secretary publish the newspaper. I go to the web page. I ask Jerry Hatchcock to put it in the TV station. All of that is there, August 15th. Then on the 17th, after we've had some of this done, we file the budget at the city secretary's office. Now, before the budget, and this is by law, before the budget is adopted by the city commission, the city secretary's office must have a copy of the proposed budget for public inspection for 30 days, no less than 30 days. So it's a long process. I wish we could do it quicker, but it's not that simple.
Yeah, no, Pete, and don't get me wrong. What I'm saying to you is the process of the scorecard, as I like to call it. That's the process that I'm most involved with, and I think that's where we fall in. You have to do your job according to the law, and we're not here to tell you anything different. You got to follow all the laws and the regulations. We know that by October the 1st, we have to have a budget in place, and that's fine. And you can do all those things, and you can follow all that. You know, if there's anything more boring than probably law, it's probably accounting. So we, you know, we would not, I don't envy your job whatsoever. So, but what I'm trying to get to is the planning and what these commissioners, they have a duty, you have a duty to run the city, all of you. We have a duty to make sure you're doing a good job. That's where we come in. So we don't have the job of running the city. We have the job of evaluating what you're doing and saying, you know, are the tax dollars that you're collecting, and when you ask us for a tax raise or anything else like we did this year, we say, you know, there's a reason for it. And there's a reason for why citizens will automatically say, why are you raising my taxes? My streets look like, you know what? And they go like, what am I getting for my money? I mean, if you go to the store and you say, I want to buy $100 worth of groceries, you know, and the guy says, okay, well, you can have 3 cans of dog food. That's pretty expensive stuff, you know. So that's the whole crux of what today's about. So I appreciate the you know, all those legal things. I think that's your charge, and we're not going to interfere in any way with that. Okay, but now here's the process that I'm really like to focus, and I like the commissioners to kind of address the issues that you all getting from your constituency, whether it be streets, whether it be equipment, whether it be whatever. You know, once you figure out what your appraisal tax roll is, and what you figure out the money, what I say the X factor, you say I've got to have, and what is our budget for? I mean, how much money do we anticipate that we will bring in this year?
Just tax money?
Yeah, just, I mean, what did we bring in last year? It was like, it was a $90,000 or $90 million budget, huh?
Well, general fund is about 90, and if you include all the funds, we're looking at about 125 million.
Okay. Explain to the commission when you say 125 million, 90 goes into the general fund, where do the other, you know, 30?
All the others are either self-supporting departments, well, not necessarily self-supporting, because you have BUS that's separate. They get grants, but they also have a local contribution. We have the golf course, it's a separate fund. We have motor vehicle parking system. We have the airport. All of those funds are separate. Then you have the convention and tourism fund. It's strictly for hotel motel tax. You put all of them together, this is about 125. When you heard the audit presented to you Tuesday, came up to about 130, 35 million, and that's because those include capital projects, bonds that have been spent, and it's already earmarked. Even though it takes a few years to spend all the bond money or the CO money, it's a multiple year expenditure. So that is already, when you when you issue the authorization for the bonds or the COs, you have really set the budget there, and it continues. So if you include all that, it's about 135 million. But that's another thing that we probably need to talk about also, is that for many years, we have issued certificates of obligation to take care of some much-needed equipment or much-needed projects. One of them that comes to being last year, for instance, we had the library. The library they had gotten all these grants for all these computers, and then they had to set up a separate building to house all these computers. They had a nice grant, but that grant required a local contribution. You couldn't just say, take it out of the general fund, because take it out of the general fund, that fund balance is going to decrease. So we came to the City Commission, we issue a certificate of obligation just to take care of that portion of the local share for the library, and right now, it's being done. The construction is being done right now. Public can see. They're going to enjoy those extra computers that they didn't have before. We also had 3.5 million in streets for street construction. Yes, we get monies from the CDBG grants, but we also need money for those areas that don't qualify for under CDBG. We issued 3.5. I've checked with the city engineer recently, and they have everything earmarked from this 3.5 billion for streets, but more than likely, they'll run out, say, by December or January of the coming year. So it would be nice for us, in order to keep the momentum going, especially for streets, maybe between now and September, come to you, get a reimbursement resolution, and we'll select the major you tell us and we can do that. What is it that you need? And then, of course, we have to tell you how much it's going to cost. The other area that we also need to think about is the bridge, the report that was given to you by Mr. Sepulveda Tuesday. That's additional money that we certainly don't want to take out of the general fund. See, the general fund right now, we need to keep an extra reserve. Several years ago, during Hurricane Dolly, we had to take money. This is what these reserves are for emergencies like a hurricane. We had to spend about $1 million more. We didn't get everything reimbursed from FEMA. They're very difficult sometimes to. It's not that simple. They don't reimburse you.
I don't mean to interrupt you again, but okay, I think
Okay, maybe I'm getting off. Okay.
Well, no, I understand. Let me tell you. I don't know how I can best explain this to you, but you're going to have X amount of dollars collected, and you're going to have X amount of dollars that are going to be spent, okay? Now, you have, certificates of obligation, we all understand. You need an extra $1 million to fix the library. This past year, we voted to get you a certificate of obligation to do that thing. And you would like to have 17% stashed away at all times, where you have, instead of having the $11 million that you have stashed away now, you'd like to have probably about $15 million. My whole idea today is, how do we meet those? And we don't tell you what streets we want. Engineering tells us what streets need to be done. And if we have a shortfall, then we go to the certificates of obligation. But how do you pay off the certificates of obligation? Out of your general revenue fund somewhere along the line. And that's what I'm saying, is that I'm looking at like a balance sheet. I want to know what I'm spending and where I'm spending it and why I'm spending it.
Well, every time you adopt the tax rate, there are two tax rates. There's an M&O rate and a debt service rate. It's all property tax supported payments.
I think what the mayor
Okay.
intends to ask is that, okay, so much money is going towards streets. Well, how much is each street costing us? And how are those streets being selected? Because we are voting on COs, and I've had an issue with this for 3 years now, where it says so many millions for streets, but yet we don't have a breakdown of which streets those are. And how do we prioritize those streets? Because we're getting those phone calls. And just as an example, most recently, I live off Sunset, which is right off Palm. He lives on Palm. Well, suddenly I'm driving onto to Palm and they're redoing the street. I had no idea about that. And how much is that costing? So I'm getting phone calls from people asking, well, why is your street now getting fixed? So we need to be able to answer those questions and letting them know.
And
let
so
them know.
that's the process that I would like to address here today, because I want to know how I can effectively, sit here, and if Melissa calls me or Jessica calls me or John Q. Public calls me and says, hey, how does this process work? How does your purchasing process work? I was with John not too terribly long ago, and the guy's like, well, didn't the city have this machine? I said, that's not my job. But our job really is to be able to call Public Works and say, hey, send me the list of all the machinery you have. When did you purchase it? How are you maintaining it? And what's it costing us? Very, very simple. And I think that's what we're here about today. And Charlie, you want to sit down? You're making me nervous walking around.
You're making me nervous sitting down.
I think better sitting down, okay? Anyway, how do we go about doing that, Charlie? Now, you apparently obviously have an answer, or Pete, one of the two. In other words, I can tell you how I would start. I take a look and let's say, here's your pie chart, and you say, 41% or 41.55 goes to security, public safety, okay? And okay, so I see our chief over there and say, can we come up here and talk to him and say, how many cars do you have? When did you get those cars? How do you know where those cars are going? And what's it costing us per manpower? You guys talk all the time about, well, we're spending a lot of time on overtime. Why are we spending time on overtime? And how do we help you? How do we help you? We're not here to hurt you. And I think that's the issue that we need to get, because I want a scorecard. Hopefully you guys realize at the end of today, and if the commissioner also agrees with me, we want to know what's being spent, how is it being spent, and is it being spent right, so that we can sit there and say, our metrics has to be, we have to evaluate you as you're evaluating them, period.
Right. Well, I think we need to do a better job with that as far as allowing you the information as to what streets we're programming to work on. And of course,
But let me ask you this: what is our street budget, and what streets are we going to work on for the next? In other words, there was an issue that came before the city commission that Commissioner Longoria had an issue with, saying like, we're trying to take money out of one pot because the manpower to do that street over in that area, it's not going to be done for 3 years. Why are we waiting 3 years? Those are the issues and the questions that are being asked. I think. And if I'm wrong, commissioners.
No, that's correct, and the street was a big issue that coming into office, that a lot of the constituents had concerns.
Right.
And I know from the very inception of my coming on board was we were asking, provide us a list, put it online, because that will save everybody time, and we don't have to scramble about calling here, calling that department, because the constituents are calling in. They don't seem to be getting a response.
See, and that's the first issue. And the second issue, and here I think I speak in unison, we have the big loser. We have, the Complete Streets program, the bike and hike trail. And we say, the first thing we say is we're going to need X amount of dollars. Well, you don't have X amount of dollars. Well, why do we not have X amount of dollars? Do we not have a contingency fee? I know personally, in trying to get the downtown off the ground, is saying, listen, I'm trying to buy some stuff. I went to GBIC and got, worked out a deal to get some money. But we don't have, I think I've explained to you, and I think the public needs to know as well, is, most every other city has a leasing and a real estate, department, and they have an allocated budget. I know that until today, none of these commissioners, I don't know, I didn't know that I was getting anything, because, the thing about it is, I think everybody, when they first stop in and get sworn in, say, hey, here's your budget. Where's your staff member? Where's your office? And how much did you get to spend to go travel? And how do you pick out which commissioner goes to what convention and whatever else? I think those are the issues that I think are very pressing and are very, very, need to be addressed.
Start the
Yeah, we can certainly work on that.
draft. We're gonna work on that.
Yeah, no,
And,
but I think
identifying
this is
it-
a good draft to start working on.
Right.
But I think you need to hear from them is, why do I need this, or why do I need more, or why do I need less, and do we need a staff, at least one staff member that sits there and answers the phone for all of us, perhaps?
We got all that. We're working on all that, Mayor. We got all the rough drafts on that. We're also working on the idea of having a real estate division, and we're going to see how much funding we can put in that. All those are in preparation for the next fiscal budget.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is
Yes.
that the reason that this is so appropriate at this particular time is, if we find that, I'm not trying to create anybody with a lot of, stress and headaches, but you know what? If there's money being spent that's not being effectively spent, maybe we can find a different place for it to be spent very effectively. And that's one of the things that all these commissioners, and I think John is Exhibit A, is, he goes out to LA and he really fully understands. But you don't want us to go out there and not pay attention to why we're getting paid to go out there. But he does pay attention to what he's going, and he realizes what every other city's doing, and he's bringing back some ideas to this community that are very helpful. Yes.
That kind of borders on leads into one of my frustrations, which is that the administration, the commission, should have some input into budget direction. I'm not saying that we should tell you what to do, but if we feel that now that we know the city workings a little better, that we need better GIS equipment, let's use that as an example. And we believe, because we go to conferences and we read and all of that stuff, and we know the potential of this particular type of equipment, that perhaps we should start looking at saving some money every budgetary year for future technology or advanced technology, so that when the future day comes, we're prepared to be able to jump in and be able to use it efficiently like other cities do. But there's no room in this process for that. We can't say to you, well, we want to see some portion of the budget reserved for advanced technology, because if we do, the answer is we don't have any. Well, then tomorrow comes and we're not prepared for that advanced technology, and we're always falling behind, and that's very frustrating. When I didn't go to all of the budgetary meetings, but I did go to a lot, as you know, and it's very hard for me to sit there and watch all the numbers up on the screen and be able to judge if one particular department or another is working efficiently or not. I see a bunch of numbers, but I don't know. I'm not in that department every day. I don't know whether, I don't have any scorecard to look at. Is this department running at X amount efficiency, or are they accomplishing their goals? There's no transparency there, and that's very difficult for us to be able to sit and vote yes or no on whether Department X is appropriately funded.
And what about keeping us abreast of departmental evaluations so
Well, that's
that we
part of
know?
Yeah, and that's true too. Department evaluations, that's a big black box that we don't have insight into.
One of the understandings I had about the scorecard is to identify the department's measures and things like that, and then we have a scorecard where we evaluate that performance. And we're getting all those things done as we speak. GIS, we have a committee right now that is evaluating what we need to do with that. Now, and we're going to work on that. So we've been listening to some of the things that you have been telling us, and we want to make sure that we work on technology as well, because technology is a big issue with us. Saying that, our computer system, not too long ago, I think Gail's here, our MIS director, to attest, our computer system was way behind. It was to the point that there was no fixing. If something broke down, it was gone. There was no replaceable parts for that. So we do have a system in place now that we can work with and enhance its technology, because our computer system is pretty well up to par. But you're correct. We always have to be looking to assure ourselves that technology is something we keep up with, because our computer system will then fall back. So we've learned a lot from...
Here's a suggestion I may have. Do you have, is there any department head out here right now that's willing to come and step up here and say, listen, here's what my department consists of, here's what my budget is, Pete, by the time I come to you or when I get my package, I'm going to need an increase because I'm going to need something or other that's required. And I don't know, I'm trying to get a dialogue between the city employees and saying, hey, what do you think about this scorecard? And then, you know, I would like to engage anybody out there, to be honest with you, that's a member of the public, that any comments they have, this is the time to come forward, because I'm sure that instead of saying, you know, hey, your pothole didn't get fixed or your street didn't get fixed, but you didn't come to this meeting and we don't have any money, and whatever it is, you know, this accountability runs both ways. It runs from our side to you guys, and you guys to us, and us to the public, and the public to us. So that's, I don't know if anybody would like to Sure, Carlos?
Have a seat. Right here.
Oh, here, okay. Good afternoon, thanks.
You guys all know Carlos Lastra, engineering.
Yes.
He's a very, you know, works with me a lot, okay?
Yes,
And Santana Torres, Director of Public Works, also, you know, we have a lot of interaction because it's, obviously it's the on-the-hands
Right.
situation that you have. Go ahead, Carlos.
Okay, basically, what we have, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of streets that need work. I mean, finding a street that needs work is not a problem. I mean, we have over 700 miles of streets in the city of Brownsville, not including state roadways like 802 and 1847 and all that. So I'd say we got about between 40 and 50% of streets that need total reconstruction. And I'm talking like removal of everything and putting it back in place. Just this week, we
Go ahead,
approved,
please.
yeah, we approved, or the commission approved a street project, Honeydale Road. That project came in at about, just the street portion came in at about 600,000, just the street portion. So we're talking about, you know, we're looking at about maybe $1.3 million a mile for streets. So if we've got, you know, 350 miles of streets, we're looking about $350 million to do like total reconstruction. That's not include utilities or anything like that, it's just street work. This year we got $3 million for streets. Out of those $3 million, Public Works got one. Am I correct, Mr. Gonzalez? We got two. So right now we're on pace to use up that money by December, because Honeydale came in at 600. Los Ebanos, that was approved 2 meetings ago. From Old Dallas to the Frontage Road, that came in at 417,000. So that's $1 million right there. We got the other phase of Los Ebanos from Paderes to Boca Chica. We're anticipating it's going to be around that, you know, around that much, about another, you know, maybe $500,000, a little bit more. And then we also got Jefferson coming up, which is from Palm Boulevard to Central Boulevard, and we're looking at about, you know, another over $500,000 just the street portion. So right there by December, we should have those $2 million, you know, used up.
I think Commissioner,
I think we approximated it a few years ago that if we have to go out on contract and have contractors work for us on some of the streets, and really we rely on engineering to make that call, we spend like $1 million per mile.
And if I may add, on our public works side, our maintenance, it takes us about $218,000 to do a mile. You know, right now we're at 12 and a half miles, and we're projecting at least about 20 miles for this year. So right now we're almost at $2 million that we've.
let me ask you this. And again, I don't mean to step if you want to. Here's what I've seen in other cities, and again, I'm not trying to tell you how to run your business, but you know, this is the computer system that we talked about, where you have saying, let's say you've got 700 miles within the confines of the city limits, okay? You know, you realize that you should have, you know, how often, I mean, the Department of Transportation, I happen to be intimately familiar because I have relatives that work and are engineers. You know, they can tell you, hey, it costs you X amount of dollars per mile. It costs you, you know, and you got to do it, let's say year one. You won't have to maintain that street for another 10 years.
Exactly.
They all have the projected, sort of like the shelf life of, you know, chemicals. And so you go, this is how long it's going to be. By year 2020, you're going to have to at least go maintain it. In other words, it's no different than a vehicle. It cost me $20,000 to buy that vehicle. It's going to be good for 5 years, but if I don't tune it up and change the oil and do all that stuff, and that's going to cost me X amount of dollars. Do we have a computer program that does that for us?
Currently, no. No, we don't.
Is there? What's that?
We have tracking software for it. I mean, there's
You wanna come?
life cycle of the street is It's anywhere from about 12 to 15 years when you have to do that maintenance that you're talking about.
And isn't,
What Santana hasn't been started is crack sealing. And that program is what targets your streets at 1 to 2 years of age, which will save us money to try to catch up with the deficiency we have.
And isn't that, I'm sorry, Estelle, you know.
do we use that, the crack sealing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, they do.
Yes, we do. Last year, we did 55 miles, and this year, we're looking to do it at least 55 or more.
And that's maintenance.
That is maintenance, yes, sir.
Wasn't
Or-
there a contract that was somewhere out there for trying to do the maintenance on those? Rejuvenation. The rejuvenation?
Right.
Is that the same thing?
No, ma'am, that is differently something different. The
What is the
reju,
purpose of that?
which one, ma'am? The
What's the
rejuvenation?
difference between that and the sealant? Explain.
All right, the crack sealing is to prevent any moisture going through the cracks. I don't know, like the hike and bike trail, ma'am?
Which doesn't work.
Well, no, we.
I'm sorry, I'm
no,
sorry.
No, we tried crack sealing and because it's too
I
much.
understand.
It's way out.
Tolerances.
That's,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I
All right.
apologize.
Okay, thank you. And the
We have to insert a little humor here because
Yes.
I tell you what,
No, we
all.
we had huge problems like that on Pablo Quisel. When Pablo Quisel was done, the country club, it's the type of soil that's out there really causes a big, huge problem with those huge cracks. That-
usually,
Let him in, let him in.
Usually,
Let's go ahead.
what happens,
Defense mode.
yeah, during the age of the street, it deteriorates and it dries up and it just starts to crack and brittle. The process of this rejuvenation was to apply a oil-based product that would adhere and make this asphalt bind back. Not to perfect it, not to make it last for another additional 10 years, but to give us time to get some monies from, and at least save it for at least 2, 3, 5 years.
And are we using that?
Well, we intended to, but apparently it all stopped. But that was our
We're-
intention.
Our goal now is to go in-house and do as much of this in-house as possible.
No, and I understand, but the problem is that we're not moving forward.
No, we stopped.
The transparency and the accountability that we should be having for these projects getting done, at least I don't feel that we're seeing it. And so if somebody comes and asks me, what is the city working on as far as streets? I don't know what to respond to them. We don't know.
And, okay, the tracking, go ahead.
And this whole process and rotation of which streets you're going to do first and how long they last and all of that kind of stuff that you're talking about, I would believe, I think that GIS equipment can make that whole process a lot more efficient.
Definitely.
So that you're more efficient while you decide and do this work. So that's an example of where if we put aside and made room in the budget, how you make room in the budget, that's your problem, okay? But if we tell you, you know what, this really will make your process more efficient so that either we end up doing more roads in 1 year or the roads last longer so you don't have to keep redoing them and spending more money, then that's an area that we should be looking at. The second point I would make is that when you read, and Carlos and I have had this discussion, when you redo the road completely, like you said, rip it all out completely, you're going to have to paint it, right? You're going to have to put the stripes back on it. So what is the collaborative work going on there and that you're talking to traffic and health
we work,
and parks to see, okay, when I put the paint down, I'm either going to put the stripe here or here. Well, if you put it to where there's no place to walk or ride a bike on that road, and then later somebody comes along and says, you know what, why doesn't that road have a bike lane? Then the answer is, well, because we can't afford it.
No.
Whereas if you had thought about it proactively, then it wouldn't have been any more money. You'd still have to paint the road.
We're doing that now. As a matter of fact, we just finished paving at Bus Road, and Robert's crews are going out there and going to restripe that.
No, I know that now.
So we work closely with the traffic department.
I know
on
that. But on a regular basis.
What John was talking about, your greenery, your landscaping, that kind of stuff,
Okay.
because we have to incorporate all that into
See,
it.
Carlos, I think what we're hearing, and I may be wrong, but I told somebody, so I'd like to be a student of what's going on, is that we need to address these issues we need to have a comprehensive, evaluation of, on a computer basis. In other words, if I were to garner a guess, from what I understand and what the state does, they go out throughout the state. They know when and where and how all of these things are going to take place, 5 years ahead of time, if not even longer. And I think that should be a goal of ours, because what happens is when you come to Pete this time around and say, you know what, I could use more people, but you know what, that GIS, program is going to cost me X amount of dollars. I need that more. But then, because if I'm doing 20 miles of road, of new construction this year, next year I ought to be doing 22, the next year 24. In other words, you've got to keep up with this thing, because everything, you can't let it look like it looks right now, for very long, and go out to the economic forces that whoever's want to invest in Brownsville and say, I want to live here, I want to come visit here, I want this to be a destination, and this lady can go out there and promote it in all the, fish, Brownsville, do whatever it is that you're going to do in Brownsville. But you got to have a plan. And I think that's where I think this whole commission has asked me, and so, but the answer has always been, we don't have any money. But how do I know that I'm spending the money that I'm getting efficiently? Where's my scorecard?
One thing I can tell you, I think for the most part, most of us have been here about 10 years on average. And as far as the GIS, the biggest expense, we have a lot of the software already, most of it, I think. And we have the ability to do data collection. The problem is that doing that data collection is the expensive part. As far as the streets that we repaved, the new streets that have been done for the new subdivisions from about 2002 on this way, we have a log of all the streets that have been done, where they've been done, and we try to maintain those streets on a periodic cycle.
And I don't think that's the issue. Where your southmost area, your West Brownsville area,
those are
your downtown area.
Yeah.
The new development's easy. It's sort of like, I think I told someone yesterday, it's easy to take care of the latest client that walks in your door because he just gave you a retainer, and the retainer of the guy that came back the last time, you already spent it. So, it's not a criticism, but it is a need that this city requires, and it is incumbent upon us to address these needs, because we can't be Brownsville proud and go out there and sell Brownsville if Brownsville doesn't look beautiful.
What I'm trying to get is the importance of those streets. If we don't maintain those streets and start focusing on just the old streets, those streets are eventually going to deteriorate.
No, but see, here's again.
Ahead.
No,
so
but that's
track
not
of all the new streets that we need to reconstruct.
with all due respect, what happens is, no, you can't say I'm going to take care of my oldest son, but I'm not going to take care of my youngest son, because I don't have enough money to take care of both of them. You're going to take part, you're going to take a little bit out of here, and you're going to take a little bit out of there, and together you're going to get to where you need to go.
Definitely, we are doing that.
And I guess I'm not saying you're not. We don't know it, and I tell you what, and we don't see it.
We need to, and we've been discussing that we need to show a better way of showing off what we're doing, or showing to the community.
Well, it's real simple, though.
Yeah.
All of us, you see websites, building a better block in 2 shakes. Now we're part of a national website. If somebody in New York wants to see what we're doing, we can do it. There's no reason why we can't sit there and say, Tia, allá on Southmost over there, don't worry about that, because, come October of next year, they're going to work on your street. Or, I understand whenever I ask about potholes, we have a guy that's all they do. Well, but where are they going? And how do you find out where all your potholes are? All of us can tell us where the potholes are, because I can tell you coming to work, I can tell you where 10 of them are, and I'm sure you do too.
Yes, sir.
That's a crazy part about it. It's like we have to open our eyes and see what we have, and let's do something about it.
Can I say something? How you were saying that Los Sebanos in between Paderes and Boca Chica,
Right.
I've had a serious issue that I've contacted PUB a million times, the smell.
Right.
I don't want to repave it without fixing
No,
this.
they're part of that project as well. PUB is doing a major rehab of their lines, and I think they're doing something at the lift station that's there on one of the corners there. They're going to redo all that. So that's part of this project.
That's very important.
We're working with them closely on that to ensure that they take care of it now after we pave it, and so.
Well, see, I would like to see, this is the beginning. I don't anticipate that we want to bore everybody for a long time and take time away from their families. But I hope that the audience out there, all your directors, are getting a notion of what we're looking at as a commission. You know, again, it's always easy to pick up rumors or someone saying, oh, you could get it? What's he doing this for? You know, hey, you know, there's no darkness in any heart sitting on this commission. The whole idea, though, that there's a lot of room for improvement, and we're not going to sit here and tell you that there's not room for improvement, because we know. Now, this is a very learned commission. This is maybe, you know, I'm not saying anything about any previous administrations, but I'm telling you, this is a very dedicated, very intelligent, and very, this commission is going to do something about what we've got going. That's all there is to it.
No, we're fortunate to see that.
You know,
Yes.
and
We're gonna work with that.
Patricia, you have, from a business point of view, can you kind of, maybe, I haven't said all the right words or the best words, because I'm a lawyer by trade. Maybe you could kind of give us your idea from a public citizen, if you don't mind.
Sure. I guess my suggestion would be, come June 15th, when you have the budget documents that are due in the office, perhaps a suggestion for the department is to look at it as a proposal. So not only am I requesting $12 million in public works, or $40 million in police department, or $20 million in the fire department, but in exchange for that $12 million or $40 million, what am I offering the citizens of Brownsville? And perhaps that'll give the commissioners and the city manager and the team something to shoot for. And then next year, when you all are doing this exact same thing, by the way, I applaud the mayor, the commissioners, and the management for doing this. Next year, when the numbers come around again, it's easier to sit down and say, wait a minute, last year you asked for $12 million and we gave it. And you said you were going to deliver this, but you delivered 80% of it. So perhaps we should hold the department accountable this year and take a look at it again. And I think, when I hear scorecard, what I think is, what's the objective? And what are we going to be looking at next year? And how are we going to evaluate the team that asked for 10, 20, 30, $40 million? And how do we hold that department head accountable? So I think, you've got 30-some days, and when that document gets submitted, I would suggest that maybe those department heads think about what product they're selling to the citizens of Brownsville, because this is great. I love the fact that it's happening. I'm happy to pay taxes. I don't fear that federal income taxes.
It's something else.
But I would like to have an idea as to what we're supposed to get in exchange. And then next year, when this happens, and when this same table meets, perhaps you can look at those department heads and look at the proposals that were made and evaluate whether or not they were able to deliver. And then, obviously, that's part of the evaluation process of the city manager.
And I think, Mary, that he hit the nail on the head. I think the major problem here is communication. Each department and the city collectively has to be able to tell its story. The police department comes up here and says, I need your approval on this matching grant. Okay, well, what is this grant going to pay for? Is it going to mean more patrols in a certain part of town? Is it going to mean that we're going to have more officers in the evening? What is the story behind what you are requesting? And collectively, we have to do that as a city. We have to be able to let our constituents know, taxpayers know what they're getting with their tax dollars. And if we don't know what they're getting, then we cannot convey that, and we can't tell our story and market the city the way that we want to.
And go ahead.
I'm sorry. The scorecard shouldn't be a scary thing. We're all evaluated. My boss evaluates me, and I have a higher degree. Everybody else here has a boss to some. Run your own business, but I'm sure that your father and you talk about your profits and receipts and what you should change every single year, if not maybe even every single month. So there shouldn't be a fear of a scorecard, rather a welcoming to see, am I operating as a department or as a person within the city at the highest level that I can? If you never get a report card, then how do you really know that you're doing well? That would be like going to school and never having to take a test. Well, how would the teachers really know that you learned the material? So a scorecard that's transparent, that the community can see, that we can see, makes the whole process, number one, transparent, number two, accountable, and that whole budgetary process should be aided by knowing that that what did you get for the money that you gave, just like Mr. Sampaio described.
And here's a starting point also. I think you should try to, a couple of things. You know, we need to, the city organization chart, you know, needs to be kind of revamped. Engineering ought to be with public works, and I mean, the related departments ought to make sense, because one's related to the other, whether planning and zoning or however it is that goes, but it's got to be related. And I think that some of you can kind of give us a hint as to how that's going to happen. I think as a city commission that we can also say, you know, what is of great interest to you? These are the departments that perhaps maybe you're the one that gets to see this. I mean, we get to see all the report cards, but you know, somebody, you can't possibly think that I mean, you're into wellness and you're into traffic and bike and hike. You know, some of the things that are related to the things that you're very interested in, I think we can kind of say, you know, Commissioner, would you make sure, so that we can kind of distribute the workload. The two things that you're going to look to in every department, the first thing is your manpower, and the second thing is your equipment, whether it be computers, whether it be machinery. You know, how do we know how many, you know, what I call collop machines do we have? Whether we're doing streets or we're doing whatever, sidewalks, whatever it is that we do. I mean, I keep telling you guys about, you know, if you watch television, especially when you're, I don't watch television say sports, but they talk about this McAllen Gymco, and you have like a bar card or a bar number on every one of your pieces of machinery. That AT&T's got that program. What they know is they know when you acquired it, you know, when you maintain it, where it's rolling. I mean, those guys, they can tell you exactly, hey, you know, I've got a tractor, what's it doing? Well, it's over there on 11th and Washington, you know, taking out a pipe at every moment of the day. That's why I'm saying technology is so important to run the city, and organization is part of it. But I think those are the focused areas that every department needs to take a look at. Their manpower, their equipment, computers, you know, how is your technology? Because the scorecard's going to, you know, the better organized you are, and the more assistance you have by, say, you know, technology. I'm not trying to replace people, but you know what? You know, there is a place for technology so that you can work more efficiently, and you can report back to all these. I mean, punch a button. I mean, you can sit there and say, I don't know about John, but I mean, you know, we can punch a button in 2 seconds and tell you a profit and loss for the year on my law practice, whatever it is. And it's not very profitable, I'll tell you that much.
And I would add to that, if I may, collaboration, because of the projects that I work on and have worked on, they're usually very, 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 very cheap. And the reason I say that is because, number one, there's no money. And number two, we work very hard to produce a program that is more than the dollar sign attached to it, because we go out and find partners. We try very hard to think outside the box and find partners. There's a program with Resaca Restoration that we just met with the grant writers about, that began as restoring a resaca, but in the end, if we get what we're aiming for, we're going to get every neighborhood around each resaca done having a beautiful park with an active space, sidewalks and ways to walk or ride your bike to school, a youth build program with efficiency monitored every single month or every single 6 months, so that you can take something that you, if I had come and said, I need $1 million to redo this neighborhood, you would have said no. I would have not asked, because that was just way outside the budget. But by putting all those partners together and bumping into each other and thinking that way, we can accomplish more with very less money. And that way we reach our long-range goals a lot faster, because we have our eye on what is our long-range goal. And I think that is not something that we do well either.
See, you always have to have, kind of like everything else, two components. You have to have short-term goals, and you have to have long-term goals. You know, something that you got to see. I mean, you know, you can't expect a miracle overnight. But if you don't plan, if all we do is crisis management and go like, oh my God, you know, she's got a problem. And see, that's the other thing, is that eliminates all that. When you, in other words, it's not on the spot, oh, I got this bad odor over here. You know what? I'm telling you, we already dealt with that, or we're going to deal with that. But the calls that keep coming in are just, there's a reason there's so many calls that are coming in. And that's because we don't have answers. And we should have answers, okay? And so, anything else?
I just want to.
Yeah. Well, John, I mean, like I said, you expressed some concern to me about some things, and I think one of them was equipment, and tell me what,
Yeah, I mean, basically, you just spelled it out. We're really concerned about the equipment we have, how it's being used, and I think if we just keep track of what we have, the inventory, the maintenance logs. I mean, we see how it's being depreciated, and we can budget for new equipment. I know our street sweepers are horrible. I heard
Most of our equipment is more than 10, 12 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I heard Robert joke.
We're just trying to mend it and get it going and get on the streets.
Well, and let me tell you, I'm not a stranger to all this. God rest his soul. When Mr. B was, running the school district, I mean, we did it the same way. I would go with him to school bus auctions in Falfurrias and buy, third-hand buses, and we didn't have air conditioners in those buses. Half of our schools didn't have air conditioning, but now all your buses are air conditioned, and you have all your classrooms are air conditioned. So I'm not oblivious to that. But what it tells me, though, is that if all our equipment is 10 or 12 years old, we're not doing something right, okay? And that means that we have to have, it's sort of like saying, hey, we can take care of out there, we can't take care of here. No, we've got to take a little bit of care over there, a little bit over here, and with a little bit of planning, because if you just wait for your car to break down before you go get it serviced, you're in trouble, guys. And so, you all want to hear from some other department, or is there some? Wait a minute, before we get to. I'm sorry.
Sure. Oh, no, well, just to add to what Rose said, if we can just be more involved in the budget process and put our wants, and it's not really ours, it's not Rose's or John's, it's our constituents, because they express to us what they want. Now, I know I was very fortunate in this last budget to have very supportive constituents that said, hey, if we need a tax raise, we support you. So that helped a little bit. But come the next year, if we're in the same hole, I mean, they want to know, what did you do to save us money or cut that hole in half, And I want to be able to tell them, we did an audit and we took these measures, or we made these changes in processes, and it was worth it. Their money is being put to good use. So that's what I want to be able to do. Not so much for re-election, because it's actually my money too. I'm interested in seeing that it's being well spent.
So when are you up for re-election? I'm just kidding. No, anyway, and I don't want to dampen anybody else who's prepared. What I don't want is to call on someone, or you guys ask someone to come up here who doesn't have, obviously, Carlos, this was something that, you kind of anticipated. I didn't call anybody. I didn't tell Charlie I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. I wanted to discuss the budget process in relation to the efficiency of the workings of our government. And so I'm happy to listen to anybody else who's prepared, regardless of what our wants or, lack thereof. If somebody else wants to speak up, we'll invite everybody. We're not going to go forever because, like I said, we've got to keep it interesting, and finance is not interesting, but it's essential. Lenny?
Thank you.
I'll be glad to get up there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate,
Carlos,
hearing us out.
you guys keep working hard.
Thank you.
Everybody knows Lenny, right?
Our budget started at $20.2 million. I think we're up to 21.2 because of the raises the firemen got. 91.2% of it is all personnel. The other 9 percentage is all operating cost. We've cut 20% of operating cost, and it's had a little bit of a dire effect on us this year. But we're making do with what we got anyway. We've spent quite a bit of money, mainly on the gasoline. It's gone a lot higher than we have presently, and that's because of the costs. We're maintaining our equipment as much as we can. We have 3 or 4 trucks that are over 10 years old. Traditionally, we've been changing them every year when they become at the 10-year mark. The last 2 years, we have not bought new trucks. That's one of the reasons that you see me out there trying to get grants. And we were able to get one from CDBG. We're changing a truck that's over 12 years old, and it was due 2 years ago for refitting. So I'll entertain questions you have. We're trying our best, hitting the brush for grants. We've gotten a few from the government. We got one for $260,000 here recently, but it was to outfit the stations for the health and welfare of the firefighters, which is for exhaust systems. And they also bought 2 new air compressors that we were able, and we secured that one. It was my department that applied for it and able to get it. So just to let you, we are hitting the rush out there.
Yeah, do you have enough grant support? In other words, who's...
We do it, so we don't need grant support. What we do is on the technical side, when they come back, we get it awarded. Once in a while, we get questions that are beyond what we're used to answering, and they get real good support from the grant writers in that area.
But what I'm asking you is, I again am not familiar with everything, but I have just enough knowledge to be dangerous. And a lot of the fire departments, they actually have, the ability to go out and not only get grants, but they get the ability to have a registrar that tells them of all the grants that are out there that are available. And you got that.
I have
you've
that,
got someone to take a look at that and
yes,
capable of doing that, because I think...
And he's appointed to some of those boards, so he goes...
I sit in a state advisory, Texas Commission of Fire Protection. The governor appointed me a year ago.
Okay.
So I sit on one of the boards.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Justin.
How many, and I get this question a lot, and I get a lot
Yes,
of
ma'am.
heat for it, and I would like to know the answer because I've never had the chance to sit down with you. How many active ambulance do we have serving Brownsville right now?
We have 6 of them full-time, Monday through 7 days a week. We have 2 extra ones that we man for transfers, 8 to 5. And sometimes they stay a little later because we have too many transfers. Right now, we're averaging on the low side of 12 transfers, and we can go up to 48 on one day.
Do you all
There's where
have
the demand has been
transfers
going.
Transfers are where we go pick up someone at the hospital that needs to go, or
We
at their
have-
home to go to dialysis.
We
so things
have
like that.
175,000 citizens in this city,
Correct.
and that seems like a very low number.
And number-wise, I agree with you.
What can we do to help you get more?
There's a couple of things I would have. One of them I'd rather talk to you all later on it. Another one is more manpower, to be honest with you.
Is that on the EMS side?
Yes, sir.
I feel like this is an urgent issue that we should address.
What is a national average of how many ambulances do you have full-time 24/7 for how many people?
I hate to tell you, the only one that I have that's out there is under NFPA, and it's in a response time based, that we should be able to get an ambulance to somebody's home within 8 minutes. I think we're shy 2 from that angle, two ambulances.
On a slow night or a busy night?
That anytime.
I've heard calls 30 minutes and longer. I mean, that's, I'm not
Well,
saying it's you.
yeah, when I go back, I've
What
had the
can
same
I
calls.
do?
Yeah,
What
I've had the
can I
same
do?
calls that you had. They took you all 30 minutes, and I go back, and it comes out 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes. I've been in an emergency.
It seems like an eternity.
I know it's not the guy's fault. I know it's not yours.
Well,
what can we do to supply you?
The added
I think
burden is that our EMS responds to countywide. It also responds to the rural areas of the county. And we have a contract, mutual aid contract with the county.
See, Lenny,
Yeah.
here's what I suggest. If you would give us a national average, now we know how understaffed we are. The second thing is, you know what your budget is. You know how we have contracts with the county.
Right.
What kind of revenue does that bring into you? And let's see if there's any way that you can sit there and say, if I'm able to save a little bit on here, then within 3 years, I'll be able to buy another ambulance. Then I do the same thing down the road, maybe 6 years, I'll be up to the national average. It's not like we're going to do everything overnight.
Correct.
But we have, remember I kept telling you, there's a short-range plan and there's a long-range plan. And that's where you got to aim for, okay?
I understand, sorry. I understand that we have the county mutual aid, whatnot, but that should not affect our Brownsville taxpayers in their urgent
Oh, no,
minutes.
I'm just saying that hurts us as well because we have to respond to other calls.
No, I understand that.
But
I'm
may I
just-
interject something that a lot of us lose sight of it? We started the first responder program when I first became chief for that particular reason. The most important thing, as the doctor would know, it's not getting an ambulance there, it's getting you medical help. So what we have AEDs, I hope you all know what I'm talking about, in every fire truck. So should an emergency call, even though an ambulance may be busy, we're going to get you medical help right away. And we dispatch those guys when our ambulances are busy. So we're making sure one way or another we're going to get you medical help as quickly as possible. So we're not leaving the citizens out without helping them.
I wasn't accusing you of that.
No,
I'm
I'm not. But I was
I
telling you, a
understand
lot
that.
of citizens don't realize that.
Every fireman that we hire now is cross-trained, so they're firemen and EMS technicians. So I guess what he's saying is, worst case scenario, we may have a fire truck respond to help somebody in need of medical assistance.
When I'm asking budget-wise, how can I get you more? How can I get the citizens?
That's the hard
how
part,
can we get the
because
citizens
all of us need
more?
help on this.
Commissioner Rose?
I think that one way might be to consider, correct me if I'm wrong, beginning the process of some sort of a bond issue for safety purposes, whether it be fire, police, anything that relates to safety. And I know it's a very complicated process, but it may be something that the community would be happy to go and vote for and support, because they can see that that's going to give them more ambulances, more EMS.
But see, there's no way we
and so
can
on and
do
so
it without a
forth.
scorecard.
Without a scorecard.
That's what I'm
No,
getting back
the
to.
second-
We have to go through the first step before we go to the second step. You can't, half the reason you get turned down for grants, trust me, I've done many grants. I've asked for a lot of money from all different departments. And, it's that we can't justify whatever it is, or we don't have any evaluation. How do they say, you know what, we're doing the best we can because that's all we got? And they're going like, well, so what are you doing? Well, I can't tell you, but I need more money because I need another fire truck. No business person and grant people that give out grants, trust me, they are very good business people, because they generally are chief executive officers or, of, let's say, the Kennedy Foundation, who is General Cisneros. These guys are high-ranking people who know exactly how the business world runs. And if you go out and you say the Kennedy Foundation gives Santo Tomas, $125,000 for a parish hall, they want to see that thing done. They want to see a first-class thing done, because that's how they build up their reputation.
And Chief, one second, I'm sorry. I'm going to get this last part out.
Yes, ma'am.
I understand that you write your own grants, and that's wonderful. But I would say that you always should interact with the grant writers every time you write a grant, for several reasons. Not because you can't do it yourself, but because as the city grant writers, they need to be aware of everything that's going on in the city. And since they know all the other grants that they're looking at, there may be items that they can look at your grant and say, you know what, there's a grant over here that we're working on that we think would interact really well with this, which then multiplies your return.
Right.
And it's not a negative towards your grant writers at all, but it's a collaborative, okay, I have $1, how can I maximize that dollar?
Yeah, well, that's happening right now.
Yes.
And I think that's very, very important. And secondly, as far as the 8-minute response time, that scorecard is very important, because personally, with Mr. Rodriguez, a year ago, we were on the asphalt doing CPR and mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, he and I, for well over 8 minutes at a very unfortunate event.
Yes.
It didn't matter for this particular gentleman, it wouldn't have made a difference, but I'll tell you what, it was a very long
I understand.
and very well over 8 minutes.
Yeah. And that particular situation you brought, there was miscommunications from the individual that called it in from that area. That was what our investigation came back with. They were sent 3 different other locations before they were told exactly where you were. So this year, when we had the event, we made sure we had the fire truck with the medics were there in the start of it. And Well, and they're available out there. Just let me know in time, and we'll get them there.
But see, that's the thing is, I, as a taxpayer, like John said, it's his money too, it's my money too. I would be happy to vote for a tax increase or a bond issue that I could see I was getting a return on, but without that scorecard.
Correct. And personnel-wise, just to let you know, I have 187 firefighters, including myself. I have 3 staff members, secretaries, that help me do everything, and I do mean they run everything. And I have 7 individuals working on the bill collection, just to let you know employee-wise what we have. So we'll make do with about 5 or 6 people, the whole 187 firefighters.
You have 185 and 10 non-civil service.
Well, you have 185, me and the deputy chiefs is 187, and then 10 employees.
And I know we had a meeting regarding some of the collections and stuff, and I know there's some overlap with some of the departments, and that's what we failed to come back together to that meeting, and that's what I'm getting at. It was the responsiveness of the employees, the city staff, to me as a city commissioner. If I'm feeling like that, how do you think our constituents are feeling? Because that's the response that they're getting. We're bringing the concerns to you, and it's not up to us to do the resolution, because if that's what we're here for, that's not what we're here for. That's the department's job, to get together, to look at what the problem is, and to find the solutions to the problems. Because we know what the problem is, right. And we're not here to tell you how to do your jobs.
And I agree
but the responsiveness to what the concerns are, what the problems are, is not there.
Well, and in that regards, I agree with you totally. We should have the answer for you, and we do most of the time. This particular issue is when it's not beyond my control, because it's not my department, the only one we overlap with, then we have to get within the same page. We try to follow, when we set up something, even with another department, we follow through with what we say. The hard part is when the other department doesn't follow through with what they do.
And again, I think we've talked about this ad nauseum in other respects, and that is trying to get all the departments to be able to communicate with one another. We're one team, we're one community, and we're one commission. And so we need to work a little bit on that, because it's easy to blame Rose for not doing something, but it's better to kind of laud the whole commission for doing it correctly. So, and I'm not going to say anything more than anything. What I'd like to do, and with the commissioner's permission, Lenny, I appreciate it. Carlos, I appreciate it. I think you're getting a flavor for what it is that we're looking at. And if you want to go home with one thing, on your mind, think scorecard. Think scorecard all the way home. And whether you're with Bus, Andrew, Norma, anybody else here, think scorecard, okay? And then with that in mind, I think that, Charlie, what I would like to have is a little bit of a revamping of the organizational chart where you're working on it, but I'd like to have a timeline for that, so that within 7 days from today, you have a kind of a proposed different organizational chart. And I propose, Pete, that one of the things that we need to have, I know that you guys, everybody's stretched thin, but I think, I've seen this organizational chart for I don't know how long, even before I was mayor, and I've seen this assistant city manager being vacant forever. And I think that is a essential part of what we're doing and what we need to do. Keep that in mind, guys, as far as your budget process is concerned. But let's see where our needs are. Let's see where our deficiencies are. Let's see where our strengths are, and see how we can shore up whatever else that we need to have that vacancy filled out. I think would be of utmost importance to the city. And unless somebody wants to take this out a little bit longer, when we get that organizational chart, I would invite all the commissioners to say, listen, this is my area of interest. And, I'd like to divide everybody, say, hey, you take a look at the area of interest that you have in the departments that are within that interest, and let's get a little bit more collaborative with each one of the commissioners individually who wants to participate, and then so that we can kind of divide and conquer, so to speak, and then try to figure out another budget workshop maybe 30 days from now, something like that. Not to interfere with whatever timeline you have. But again, don't forget, scorecard, think about it, and once you get that organizational chart, let's not wait for the next meeting. You can send drafts of what you got going, your personnel, that way you can have notebooks, whatever it is that you've got, and break it down into different departments so that everybody can see. And like I say, we may, just like you have overlapping interest, I may have overlapping interest with what she's got or what Stella's got or Melissa's got, and then she may say, I have an overlapping interest in what you're looking at, so here's this notebook, you take a look at it, and I take a look at hers. And so that way we can kind of, we know we can collaborate. Remember, I think my latest, pronouncements are, collaboration, cooperation, and communication are the things that make a good organization work. So unless somebody's got an objection, guys, it's about 5:30.
Actually, there were at least 4 of us here that wanted to have a discussion on purchasing procedures, but I don't know how long that's going to take us.
Is purchasing here?
Yes.
Okay. Robert, go ahead.
Thank you.
I don't mind. I really don't. I don't want to get.
And then, Mr. Kapler, going back to communication, in your report that you provide us on a regular basis, I know you put on there basically your meetings and who you're meeting with. But
Well,
there's
that's just my calendar, yes.
That's your calendar,
Right.
but I would like to see an official city manager report where you have departmental reports, maybe a paragraph or 2 from each department, so we know what's going on in each department. I think that would be very beneficial.
I always feel like a stalker when I read like what he's done all week.
Okay.
Well, that was
Okay,
something
you
that
have
was
Robert
requested
Luna,
by
who's the director of purchasing. Again, Melissa, there's a conversation that you'd like to have.
Some of us were interested in the purchasing process and what the status is on audits and how often the process is audited, how often and what the threshold is with as far as dollars and what needs to go out for bid and what doesn't, RFPs, just some basics and an update on the audit.
Well, we currently, last week, we got an audit from FDA for the bus department. On the audit, on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, we got the meeting with the results of the audit. It was okay on the procurement. There were a few findings, but they were on other. It was not especially on procurement. Okay, we were able to have 0 findings on that audit. Plus also we get audits every year by the external auditors together with internal auditors. And we also have audits with FAA for the airport. And we constantly getting documentation that we have that we provide. It gets audited by all these entities. Now in reference, I've been working on on a presentation that I'm gonna have ready. I believe I'm just waiting for Jeff to give you the date.
He sent you some dates, requested some dates so we can have that
For the
meeting.
purchasing workshop? Okay.
Also, I provide the city commission with the booklet with the purchasing policy, the manual. We're currently doing implementation. Currently, as we speak, we now have on our website, we have a website that works identically like the website from the county, in which if a vendor wants to see a bid solicitation, a proposal package, or an SOQ, they go in and they have two ways of looking at this information. One is where they can download it for free. The other one is they pay this company who provides this information not only for the city projects, but for some other cities that are within the same network for these website. That's currently what Mike Forbes is using at the county. Some other entities are using the same thing. So now what we have, we're gonna have more participation from vendors in Texas. Not only locally, but in Texas. Of course, when we have a purchase of a commodity, our tendency is to approach the local vendors here first. And that's what we've always been doing. We always try to bring the lowest the lowest bidder, okay, the lowest bid, and that's how we save money. Part of the presentation that we're going to be putting together will be talking about the local government code, chapter 252, chapter 271, that talks about sealed bid solicitation, talks about proposals, talks about professional services under under government code section 2254. A lot of changes that are coming because of the changes in legislation. The threshold that was adopted back in 2008, before the threshold was set up at $15,000. Then in the year 2008, there was an agenda that was presented before City Commission to raise the threshold to what the state allows for, which was $50,000. What happened was the City Commission set it up at $35,000. So the threshold that we currently have is $35,000, which means for any goods and services, if any department wishes to purchase a commodity like a vehicle, uniforms, any type of commodity or service, if it exceeds $35,000, then it needs to follow the sealed bid solicitation, the request for proposals, statements of qualifications, or construction manager at risk, design build. So all of that we have ready on the presentation that we're going to have.
Okay.
And we're also going to be covering what it is, what's required when we have a project for construction, like perhaps a request for a performance bond and a payment bond. And we're going to give you the information that we have as per government code when on the amounts. Like for example, on a performance bond, if we have a solicitation that exceeds $100,000, then it is required to have a performance bond, and that will cover 100% of the construction. Then it talks about the payment bond. The payment bond will cover the material suppliers. They will cover the subcontractors and stuff like that.
Okay.
So we also have one of our internal auditors working 8 hours a day in the
Who is
department.
that?
Mr. Tucker.
Who?
Mr. Tucker, Arvin Tucker.
Arvin Tucker
Okay.
and Jose Chavez. the
So
auditor.
as they're doing their work, he is evaluating the work and reporting to us as to how we can.
Yeah, and Charlie, when, let me tell you, this is the only city I've ever seen that has an internal auditor that reports to the city manager. I hate to say with all due respect, every other internal auditor reports directly to the city commission. And so I think that, that practice has got to, not exist, it's got to stop. And, again, I haven't had a chance to visit with you about it, but when I looked at it and I came, that wasn't something that I was prepared to address today, but because of the request here, internal auditors never report to city managers, they report directly to the city commission.
Yeah, for as long as I've been here, we only had one internal auditor. Now,
Well, but as long as you've been here, they've been reporting back to the city
Yes,
manager.
yes,
And
sir.
so,
That's
but
true.
they should be reporting, again, unless my lawyer tells me otherwise so that I'm out of line, it's standard operating procedure everywhere.
Yeah, you can't be your own checks and balances.
And we also have the external auditors that check every year on.
Yeah, but like I said, internal auditors need to report directly to the governing body, and that's just not happening, and we'd like to I think that needs to be addressed, and Mark, unless you tell me otherwise, that's the way you can't check on yourself.
Your own checks and balances.
Well, the internal auditor we can make that.
Just get together with the legal department, but that's got to happen, and it's got to.
Mr. Tucker, we took him out of the planning department so we can concentrate on this. I'm calling him an auditor for lack of better words, but we can make you're correct, in some cities where I've seen where the internal auditor.
External auditor is something different.
Internal auditor
An
is
internal auditor, as a matter of fact, in most situations, the internal auditor is actually hired by the city commission, and asked to report directly to the city commission.
Somebody within.
Right, and it wasn't, I don't believe this internal auditor was hired by the commission, was hired by the.
No, I
before my
understand. I'm
time.
saying I think that's another practice we need to take a look at it, because there's no way You know, I mean, it just defies logic. It's that plain and simple. I think the other thing that, Robert, that I would like to take a look at, whether it be professional services or vendors, in a nutshell, and for whoever the commission that wants to take a look at it, I would suspect that I would like to see the different vendors or professional services, you know, the guys that get, you know, in other words, if you have 5 lawyers that you're working with, I want to know, you know, how much all these 5 lawyers have made, you know, and so that I could look at the guy, you know, we don't have a way of looking until we pour through all this stuff if there is some firm that is getting a disproportionate amount of the business, whatever it is, versus someone else. It may be that person may be the only qualified person, or that may be the only way, you know, like, for instance, a bond counsel. Those are hard to find, and they're very expensive. But, you know, in the long run, if I have 5 accountants or 5 lawyers or 5 whatever, and I'm utilizing one firm 10 times more than the other one, I'd like to figure out why. I think we're all entitled to that.
I think if we're going to hire an outside attorney to do some kind of work, I think it really falls on the city attorney. We don't.
Yeah, that's just an example. I'm not suggesting any particular profession or anything like that. I'm talking about professional services, and I'm talking about, you know, vendors, because what happens is, you know, with all due respect to everybody, you know, there's just not enough hours in the day to sit there and pour over all of this to say, okay, well, I can pick out this one, and oh, you used them again over here. Give me a synopsis. And that's why I say that could probably be done with a you know, punch of a button.
Can we get a sheet of all of the businesses that we've done business
Yes,
with?
ma'am, on the rotation list.
And then
And
I think when you come back with the organization, with whatever report you got, we can do 2 things. We can also have a workshop, informal workshop, without the necessity of, you know, in other words, without the necessity of a formal meeting, or maybe just get a couple of commissioners together with you, the ones that have the greatest interest in that particular field. And so, and the other thing is, you know, I don't concern myself with $35,000 and under, but I would like to be informed as to how many of those contracts do you have? Do you have, you know, three $35,000 contracts with the same contractor, you know, whereas opposed to having to come over here for the $100,000 contract that it was originally set for.
The way Pete broke down our activity, can we see that on all of our vendors? And
Yeah, even if it's 35 and under, we still go out and get proposals for that.
Well, I understand. I'm just trying to, you know, I think Melissa is really interested. I think Estella was also as well. I think both those 2 commissioners, I think you should get together with them and let them be really well versed in the procedures that you guys are implementing, so that whenever we come over here to the city hall meetings, you know, we don't have this thing about, well, I'll tell you later, I'll tell you tomorrow, or I'll table the motion. Let's get efficient.
Okay.
Anything else, guys?
Any other questions?
The other concern that I have with some of these vendors was who's checking on their work. They can't be. It goes back to you can't have your right hand checking on your left hand. I mean, you can't have yourself checking on yourself, or their internal people checking on their product and how well it's functioning, or they're evaluating themselves. And so that really concerns me, and we need to address that, and how are we going to do that? And I'm not too familiar with the processes, but what I have observed, I'm concerned that we are doing that.
And I think that's the reason why I'm suggesting
depending on what
that,
the work is.
Yeah. Well,
For example, if we're doing street work, our engineers and their staff will go check on the work to ensure that it was being done properly, either by testing, depending on what they're doing out there.
But Robert, this is going to be a great opportunity for you to address with these, as I'm suggesting the right
Yeah, I'll get that information.
Anybody else who wants to do it, I'm not making anybody do something they don't want to do, but I think this is a great opportunity and a great time to kind of address those issues so that we can move forward.
And I think we also need to look at who are we putting in those committees that are ranking these firms.
Yes.
That also plays a part into who are we approving and what ranking we're giving to these vendors.
How are we
And
auditing
so
that?
that is another procedure that also needs to be addressed, because that is your beginning component of what vendors we're using and utilizing.
In most of the cases, when we have an RFP that requires an evaluation, we always include the end user department who's going to be in this case getting those services. And also what purchasing, what I do at purchasing is I present Mr. Cavler with the scope and also with the list with the list of probable people on evaluation that might be suggested to attend. Now, Mr. Cavler, what he does is he appoints the people based on the scope. For example, if it's a construction, we bring engineering department, public works, the auditors, or we bring finance department. So it's different staff. It's not only within the department.
We try to appoint you, but to one of them, but.
That's
It's hard
why I'm raising-
it's hard
that's
to
one of the
appoint a
reasons
commissioner because you eventually have to vote on the.
That's one of the reasons that I'm bringing it up, because you have to be careful on who you appoint to these
Right.
committees, or I'm not sure what we're naming them, these committees that are qualifying on these vendors and analyzing these vendors, because if there's a conflict and you're appointing people to be on these committees, that is not supposed to be happening. And so are we screening to make sure that we're not putting people on these committees that are not supposed to be on those committees?
And are they signing documentation that says that they don't have any relatives that work, conflict of interest, or anything?
Yeah, we have all that language. We have the language.
Do they sign a document?
Yes, ma'am.
They do. So
They
if
do.
I go
They-
to your office, I will find documents, like say for the tax delinquent contract. And I
Yes.
want to know if you have someone on the evaluation committee who is related to people who work for that specific firm.
They sign, and by signing, they're stating that they don't have any real. Now, if they do, they need to write it. They need to put it in there. When
Can
they
you still
sign.
select them, or do you screen them out?
No. If that happens, then we need to do something else.
So
We
you're
need to.
saying there's no,
Even for the vendors, it works both ways. For the vendors submitting, and for the evaluation committee who's going to be evaluating these particular people. Now, sometimes we have people from PUB, in this case from the county, so it's not necessarily from the city. In some of these evaluation committees, we have people from PUB.
Someone that relates to that profession, that has an understanding.
And that has a knowledge of.
For example, on this tax collection, we asked Tony, so he wanted Tony Seguida's staff, who does the tax collections for us, to participate.
That's why.
And actually, that was part of theirs. They're the ones that collect the taxes.
But if you go back to period, you're not supposed to have somebody with an interest or that handles that type of collections be on the subcommittee.
No, but they don't handle the collections. We're talking about, in this
Well,
case.
in this case, if there's a problem with tax collections, we have no idea how the collections are done because we contract with the county, like many entities here in Cameron County, the majority, there's very few. They send out the statements, and they are on top of the collections. And if we look at the numbers that we get from Cameron County, almost every year, the collection rate goes up.
For many
They
years,
have the
for many-
software for all, we just get the money from them.
Anyway, I think I'm giving everybody a wonderful opportunity to kind of visit with one another, start a dialogue, get to know one another. And I think once you do that, you're going to be in a better position to figure out where we're navigating as we go along. I will do, would that pretty much take care of everything we got to today? Robert, thank you so much. I'm going to give everybody just a little bit of thought process. One of the things that, the questions, if you watched them as they're going through here, you should reduce to writing anything that you think should be reduced to writing that could ever come up, because these are the questions that are coming up. And when they say, hey, if I go to your office and I see that, that sort of ethical code that says you have no interest, can I get it for you? You got to be able to sit there and say, you can look at my file. My file is an open file. It belongs to the taxpayers of this town. The second thing is, I've unfortunately had this experience happening right in my office with somebody who's asked a department, two people within the same department, and get two different answers to the same question, and then there's always this other kind of quasi practice that goes on, and if you don't get the answer you want from someone, don't worry, you can get it. Someone else will give you a better answer, and therefore, because we know someone who knows someone, and I'm going like, and I've been asked, hey, will you go in and go talk to someone about this, because man, this is really something important. I said, that's not me. I sat on the St. Joe board for a long time, and people will say, my kid didn't pass. I don't have anything to do with anything about teaching. Well, I want my prima to be teaching over here if she was a coach. I don't do anything with hiring or firing. That's not our job. Our job is to watch you guys do your job. So do it good, keep working on it, get better at it, but put it in writing and make sure that your department is not giving this 2 answers to the same question just because of who they know or what they know, okay? And then the last thing, scorecard. Put it big on your forehead. Scorecard, that's going to help you a lot, okay? And if I would entertain a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you all so much for being here.
Anyone that wants to shadow a department, work in a department for a few days, let us know. You're welcome.
We have the shadow knows.